Hi. Hi, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining in for the first session of the Reliance Foundation Junior NBA Coaches Clinic online. Now, essentially, the purpose of this program is to teach techniques and best practices for team and player development at any level. And we're very glad that you can join us. Today's session is being conducted by Coach JJ Outlaw, who's the current assistant coach for the NBA franchise Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, a little background on him. He's a former college player. Outlaw was drafted by the Philadelphia Eagles. He played the NFL for 2 seasons. He then began his career in coaching and has served in player development and video coordinator for the Lakers between 2011 to 2016. And from 2016 to 2019, he worked with the Memphis Grizzlies before moving to Cleveland, where he is now. The topic for today's session is individual player development defense. Before I hand it over to Coach Outlaw, I'm sure everyone will have a lot of questions through the session, and we've set aside time specifically at the end for this. So please add in whatever questions you have in the chat, and Coach will definitely address them at the end of the session. Another thing, please note that we will be having 5 online clinics through the coaches clinics. So people who attend all 5 will be given an exclusive gift hamper. So hope to see you all for all the sessions. Jason, you can go ahead and play the video. Over to you, Coach.
Are we ready?
Yeah, I think you can go ahead.
Okay. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me, for allowing me to do this. I do realize that over these Zoom calls, there are some difficulties. So if there's anything that gets caught that is not clear or anything that you have questions about, again, we'll hold those till the end. But if something is just not clear enough, or the video isn't playing and you need a little bit more clarity and explanation on something that I'm talking about at that particular moment, please don't hesitate. I want this to be as beneficial for all the coaches, mentors as possible. I see one chat says the voice is not coming. Is everybody hearing me okay? All right, I'll continue. Okay, okay. I see one that says yes, sir. All right, that's a sign. That's a good sign. All right. As mentioned before, my name is JJ Outlaw. I'm an assistant coach with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I've worked with the Los Angeles Lakers. I've worked with the Memphis Grizzlies, and now this is my 5th year working for the Cleveland Cavaliers organization, and my 13th year overall in the NBA. Prior to that, I did coach in college as well, and now my role with the Cavaliers is to work with our guards, namely Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Ricky Rubio, Ty Jerome, Raul Neto, all of our guard group, and also on the defensive side of the ball. So one of the biggest things that we found with our defense is that we have to develop our players in a way that we want them to play, and the way that they can be successful playing in our defense. And I would encourage all the coaches out there, to work with your players, work with your students, work with your kids at any age level on their defensive ability. Preach the importance of it, because I think we can all agree that as coaches, as long as we've been coaching, we preach defense, and defense wins championships. Offense gets the glory, but defense wins championships. And so I just don't think that throughout basketball globally that we do enough developing on the defensive side of the ball, at least not the same way that we do offensively. So what I've prepared is a few slides, some videos of things that we do with the Cleveland Cavaliers that I think will be helpful, beneficial for all the coaches out there. And again, what we can do is at the end, I will save a little bit more time. If there's a drill that you liked, that you had some questions about, is taking notes, and we can try to adapt that, adjust that to a level that will be beneficial for you and your players. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, are we good there? Okay, so the first thing I'll talk about here is, like I said, defensive development. What is your philosophy? I think it's really important to develop a system that your players can follow. And what I mean by the system is, what is important to you? What is important to the coaches? What is important to the parents? What is important to what's the thing that you want to get across to your players? What's most important to you? For different age groups, right? It could just be staying in a stance, everybody getting into a defensive stance, being able to stay in a stance throughout the possession on defense. Maybe for some people, it's defending without fouling. Maybe, as you know, we have players of younger ages, and they think defense is just to be as physical as possible and beat up on the offensive players. And of course, in the game of basketball, we know that is not okay. Maybe for some coaches, it's rebounding. I know with a lot of the younger players, they can stay in front of the offensive player, but when the shot goes up, do they have the right techniques when it comes to rebounding? All right. The next step in this, and really what I'm trying to do, so everybody understands, is I'm trying to help provoke some thought amongst the coaches of, how do you want to approach your players from a defensive development standpoint? So the next question you have to ask is, what do you want to gain? What is our purpose in this? Okay. Is it, for us with the Cavaliers, even though our players are pros and they're in the NBA, I'm sure all of you, we have the same issues with players, is how do we get them to communicate on defense? How do we get them to become comfortable with their voices? Okay. They need to understand the defensive techniques that us as coaches are teaching and us as coaches are preaching, right? I think that with a lot of players of all different ages, I would say even especially younger players, it's important to understand, for them to understand the why of why they're doing something, right? So as coaches, we can always talk and say, do it this way, do it that way. I believe that players, especially players of younger ages at the grassroots level, they learn a lot faster if they understand why they're doing it. Why do we want them to be in a stance this way? Why do we want their feet angled this way? Why do we want them to have a stick hand up to contest shots? And then from there, we can work and build good defensive habits as a team. Because as we know, all the coaches here in the clinic know that defense wins championships. One of the things that helped us a couple years ago when we installed our defensive system with the Cavaliers and really started to take off in our progression, was that we installed a shot profile, meaning it was our style of play, right? So for all ages, maybe your players might not understand quote unquote shot profile, but they will understand style of play. What do you want to take away? What do you want to accomplish defensively? For us in the NBA, it's no middle drives. So we want to keep the ball out of the middle of the floor. We don't want the ball to get to the paint. In the NBA, if the ball gets to the middle of the floor, it is really difficult to guard because the players are just too good in our league. Maybe for at some of the different levels that you guys, you coaches are coaching at, it might just be stay in front, right? You might want your players, depending on the age, depending on the skill level, you might want your players just to stay in front of the ball, right? For us in the NBA, it's protect the paint. As we all know, you keep the ball out of the middle of the floor, you protect the paint. As the players get better and that ball gets to the paint, it's really, really hard to defend because those are really, really good shots in the paint, right? For your players, it might just be to limit paint touches, right? And again, these are things that you have to continue to teach and preach. You will hear me say that throughout this entire clinic. Teach and preach. In the NBA, it is absolutely, absolutely important that you do not allow corner three-point shots. So for your players, maybe this style of play, this shot profile is to contest every shot, right? Regardless of where the shot comes from on the floor. I understand that there's a lot of coaches in the Zoom right now that coach at a lot of different levels, and maybe the corner three-point shot isn't a premium at the age group skill level that you coach. That's fine, right? It should be, when we're teaching these developmental points, we should teach our players to contest every shot. And then the other thing that really helped us go from, I think we were, bottom third in defense 3 years ago. And now last year we were number one in the NBA in defense overall. Is that we built a culture for our players. You coaches can build an environment for your players. You hear that word all the time, culture, environment. But what does that really mean? It means that you create a place where, for lack of a better term, defense is cool, right? You can hang your hat, you can hang your coats on defense, okay? And one of the things that has really helped is that if you use phrases to build your team values, build the things that you hold important. So, quick catchphrases that really mean a lot without having to say a lot, right? Compete at all times, right? All the players, everybody that plays basketball, right, should always be in a state of competition when playing basketball, especially on the defensive side of the floor. Another good one is the standard is the standard, right? There's a right way to do things, and we should never allow ourselves to do it any other way. Another good one that I like to use is above the line. Are they practicing above the line, right? This is the line. Are they above the line? Are they below the line? And I think when you're talking about your defense, you should always be above the line. So before we get into this next segment, we'll talk about different defensive nail positioning. Again, we use all of these positions on the floor for bigs and for smalls, right? So a lot of times you may hear me talk about a small, or you may see something in the presentation that says smalls. Again, you'll see the video. We use these positionings for bigs and smalls. So it's not just for one position group, especially at different ages and stages of basketball. It is important that we develop the habits early so that our players can mature and develop into all-around players. Of course, today we're talking about defense. So I'm sure that all of the coaches here use something similar. We call this the nail position. Of course, on most basketball courts, we know the nail to be at the free throw line, right? In the NBA, we use a higher nail. We call it a high nail just because the spacing in the NBA, right, has grown so much. No longer are players just playing along the three-point line, right? We see the Trae Youngs, the Damian Lillards, the Donovan Mitchells, the Darius Garlands. They're starting to play and shoot and take shots from out here now. So our nail position is always going to be relative to the basketball. You'll see it over here. We'll split the middle of the rim in a defensive stance with our outside hand in the passing lane. Always in line with the basketball. So lower the ball, lower the nail. Higher the ball, higher the nail. And then what is the job of the nail position? The job of the nail position is to pinch the basketball, essentially shrink around the basketball, and take away the gaps in driving lanes to support and help teammates. So one of the ways that we help develop this nail position, right, is we create drills that put our players in game-like situations so that they can rep these movements over and over again. Again, for the drill, we've made it game-like. It's not exactly perfect to a game. And obviously you can see on the floor here, we've taken out some players in an effort to highlight this particular spot right here and drill this particular spot. So for this nail drill, right, you could have 2 coaches or 2 players, but the spot that you're trying to develop is this nail spot right here. So for our nail, we have our players yell out, nail, 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 3 times, early, loud, often. Again, we want them to be comfortable with their voices. And then the coach will pass it to this coach, and it's this player's responsibility to close out to this coach. Again, you'll see the angle here. We want to keep the basketball out of the middle of the floor. So our goal here is to work the game motion, communication of the nail, and position to a no middle closeout. If you have younger players, this can be a really, really fun drill because you can allow this spot right here to be a player and you can play one-on-one after the closeout. So it gives you the ability to kind of work 2 spots here. You can work the nail development defensively, and you can also work some one-on-one skill development from an offense. At our practice facility, you'll see the player here. He's got his arms out. He's got a wide base. He's in his defensive stance. He closes out to the coach with a high stick hand. Again, his arms are out. He's still in his defensive stance. And you'll notice, right, he is in a no middle stance. So when the coach takes one dribble to the middle, right, he takes the fake with the middle, with his top foot, and then he slides to another closeout with his high stick hand, contest hand. One of the things that we like to do is at the end of this drill, especially if you're using it for a warm-up drill, again, with players of all different ages, you can finish this drill with a layup. Again, this is Amani Bates, right? One of our draft picks this summer. Again, he's got his arms wide. He's got a base. He's playing that high nail relative to the ball. He's yelling, nail, nail, nail. It's important. This is important because it allows the players to get comfortable with their own voice in the gym. And again, we finish it with a layup. Again, third player here, Pete Nance. Arms are out. He's in a defensive stance. Nail, nail, nail. Finish it with a layup. This is a build-up drill here. So we're working this nail position. So here we work the nail position to defensive slides. Again, keeping the ball out of the middle of the floor. And these are drills that can be used with smaller position groups, or they can be used with your entire team. Again, we'll flip the side, and we can do the same thing to the other side of the floor, working both sides of the floor. All right. This next drill is how we can build and add another player on the floor. So now it becomes a little bit more realistic to a game. We've added a second player, but again, we've taken out some of the variables of an actual game and made the drill game-like in an effort to highlight these 2 players and their nail positioning, their closeouts, and their slides. See, that ball goes from coach to coach. We go from nail to a no middle closeout. Ball goes from coach to coach. We go from nail to a no middle closeout. All right. So now this is the same sort of development drill, but these are with our bigger players now, right? With the two players, we've added in a bigger player here at the nail, Isaiah Mobley, and then we've added in a bigger player here below who's protecting the basket in Mamadi Diakite. So Isaiah goes into his closeout. Mamadi is behind him, protecting the basket. As that shot goes up, Isaiah contests the shot. Mamadi goes from his help spot underneath the basket back to box out his man. And then we allow them to switch spots. No middle closeout, defensive slide, contest, and then Isaiah goes back to box out his man. All right, so this is how it kind of, those are drills and ways that we practice it. We drill it all the time. And then this is the way that it shows up in a game. Donovan Mitchell is playing the nail here to a no middle closeout. Where he's able to get a deflection and a score on the other end. Brings me to another point. I think it's very important that we talk to our players that if you want to get easy layups, transition, and fast break opportunities on the offensive side of the floor, that it starts on the defensive side of the floor. We can create easy buckets for ourselves and our teammates if we defend with activity. Again, you see it here. Side pick and roll. Jetty Osman is at the nail. Then he works his way to a no middle closeout back here on Jalen Brunson. Another spot from the nail, Another spot from the nail is the fill spot. So if the ball goes from a coach to a coach or a player to a player, this player gets to the nail. If this ball goes from the coach to the corner, right? We use a term. Again, we talked about culture building and using these terms to help explain what you want to say without saying too many words. Ball below, all below. It simply means that if the ball is below the free throw line, every player on the floor should be below the free throw line. So now this nail position turns into what we call a fill position. And if you were to add two players onto the floor, this position from on the ball goes to a pinch position because he's one pass away, and the nail position goes to a fill position. And then you can move the ball around however you would like to. So you see this drill. From ball to nail, ball goes to corner to fill. Corner to angle, nail, back to fill. No middle closeout in the corner. Ball to nail, nail to fill, nail to fill, drive, close out, no middle. And we talked about adding on more players to make this more game-like. Again, it is a drill. We've taken out some of the variables to highlight the positions that we want to talk about and develop. Ball to 45. He's at the nail. Nail to a pinch spot to a fill. This is our pinch spot here, one pass away. This is our fill. This is our low man spot. He is the big in this drill. helping out the guards. Whenever the ball moves, the players move. So another way, again, we do these with all of our players. You will see me at times talk about smalls development and bigs development. In that previous practice clip, I mentioned that if this ball is driven here, that the low man has to come over and help. So this is a drill in which we develop our bigger players, our low players here to come over and help in this position, right? It's the low man's job to help on the drive and then to work the game motion and communication of the low man or the low player position to help. Ball is driven from the corner. This is Evan Mobley coming over, right? And he's just going straight up in the air. Notice his hands are straight up in the air. His hands are not bent over. He's not trying to block this shot and create fouls. He's simply jumping straight up in the air with his hands straight up. Lauri Markkanen going over, right? Hands are back. Ball is in the chest. He's not trying to, block this shot. He's not trying to be overly aggressive. His hands are just going straight up in the air. All right. Another way, again, we talked about it with the smalls at the nail position. With the bigger players, right, we can add in, right, a center, a X5, a bigger player here, and an X4, and work two players here in an effort to work their combination underneath the basket. So X5, the low man or low player to help on the drive, and the X3 or X4 is the crackback or sink player to protect the X5. It is very important that we understand why this player has to go and help his teammate, because his or her teammate, because this player is going to help on the drive. And again, our goal is to work the game motion and communication of the low position to help protect the paint on the drive, and then to crack back to help protect our player. If this bigger player is lifted, then the job does not change. This player would still crack back just from this top position. So you see the drill here. You have two players that are on, Jarrett Allen and Lauri Markkanen. Lauri goes to protect, just as we saw in the drill before. And Jarrett Allen automatically goes to protect against Lauri, for Lauri, and then goes to get the rebound once the ball is thrown off the glass. These are drills that anybody can do, any player can do at any age. All we're doing is teaching the simple techniques of defensive basketball. Again, rotate it. Jarrett Allen goes to help on the drive. Lauri Markkanen goes to get the rebound as it's thrown off the glass. This is how it works out in a game. Evan Mobley is the low player. His job is to protect the paint. He goes over, and Raul Neto protects him against his player. Same thing happens again. Kevin Love protects for Dean Wade. Evan Mobley protects for Kevin Love. See it here again. Evan Mobley is the low player. He protects for Karis LeVert. Donovan Mitchell protects for Evan Mobley. So I'm not sure how many coaches are teaching or playing against the pick and roll. But one of the biggest things that we have that we can do when defending the pick and roll, no matter the age, no matter the level and or skill or talent level of the players, is develop pick and roll rules. So what are your pick and roll rules? This goes back to your philosophy or your system. What are the things that you hold important as a coach? What in pick and roll, what are your rules? What calls will your players make, right? If it is a middle pick and roll, do your players say strong and weak? Strong meaning send it to the player's right hand, weak meaning send it to the player's left hand. Do they say left and right? Is that a simpler way of communicating? Again, these are terms that we use in the NBA, but I encourage all of the coaches to come up with your own terms depending on your players, because again, we want the players to be in the most successful place possible. If it is a side pick and roll in the NBA, we'll use the term plug and down. Plug would be to send the ball to the middle of the floor. Down would be to send the ball down on the side. Or these are things that have to be developed around your players to put them in the most successful place. And again, we talk about those are the pick and roll rules for the bigs or the player that is setting the screen. What are the pick and roll rules for the player that's guarding the ball? Do you want your guards to go over the screen, or do you want them to go under the screen? How do you teach it? Do you want your bigs to be up to the level of the screen, or do you want your bigs to be back? We teach our bigs to be back. We use a term that is no roller behind, which means in the pick and roll, the roller cannot get behind our big defender. We use this drill. This is simply a 2-on-2 pick and roll drill. It can be used at any level of basketball, at any age group. Again, when I talk about these drills, we've taken out all of the game-like scenarios, all of the other players, and we've simply highlighted this game-like pick and roll action in an effort to develop our bigs, Evan Mobley here in this particular clip, to play the pick and roll. Screen happens. For us, this would be a weak. We are sending this ball to the player's left hand. You'll notice Evan is in a stance, in a defensive stance, and he will not allow this roller, or he shouldn't allow this roller to get behind him. So he's going to keep backing up until he can make a play on the ball. Next, Lowry Marketing will do the same thing. Again, this is a weak for us. He's calling weak, weak, weak. Again, this is a way for our players to use their voices on the court when they're by themselves. He's in his stance, and he's backing up, making a play on the ball. Jared Allen, not allowing the ball to get behind him, staying in his stance. One of the biggest pieces, one of the biggest pieces in teaching our defense is teaching our closeouts. Again, this doesn't matter the position of the players, doesn't matter the age of the players. Closeouts are very, very important. But there are different ways to teach the closeouts. So first, you have to decide how you want to teach your players to close out. So the closeout technique will vary depending on age group. At the NBA level, we teach our players to get all the way to the body. So when I close out, I'm going to get all the way to that offensive player's body, because in the NBA, we want to protect versus the shooters, the Steph Currys, the Damian Lillards, the Donovan Mitchells, the Darius Garlands. We cannot short closeout to these players because they will just shoot the ball over us. At your levels, right, you may teach your players to close out and chop their feet. Chopping the feet protects against the drive. It puts your defensive player in a good position to be able to defend against the drive. Doesn't matter if you chop your feet or if you close out to the body, you should always contest every shot with a stick hand. Depending on what you decide is important, your foot placement, again, I mentioned in the NBA, we like to keep players out of the middle of the floor. So our foot placement is very important on our closeouts, right? We are going to have our high foot taking away the middle of the floor. That might not be as important to you. You may want your players to just stay in front of the offensive player. So the drill that I'll show you next is multiple closeout drills. And you can use this as a warm-up drill to start off your practices. You can use this as a defensive technique drill, however you want to use it, and you can modify it to fit your player's skill level and or age groups. So you'll have a player start on this block. You'll have a player start on this block. You'll have a player start on this block, and you'll have a player start on this block. These people out here can be coaches or players. They're just standing there, so it doesn't matter who they are. They could be chairs. It could be anything. Sometimes we have to get creative. So what'll happen is once the ball is slapped, these two players will come in and touch hands and then get out to closeouts. These two players will touch hands and then get out to closeouts. We also have another version of this where these two players will clap hands and then they'll run to the top for closeouts. These two players will touch hands and then they'll run to the corner for closeouts. Again, this drill is game-like. It is not absolute to a game. We've taken out some of the variables and we've made it so that the players can develop their skills in a game-like setting. So you'll see it starts here. Coach has a ball, and each coach on the outside has a ball. The four players in the drill are at the boxes and the elbows. They come in, they touch hands, they close out. Notice Lamar Stevens here has his high foot up. His stick hand is up. Evan Mobley has his high hand up. His stick hand is up. Donovan Mitchell has his high hand up and his high foot up. Coaches can take a couple dribbles so that we can work on the defensive slide. The players who were at the bottom of the drill to start with move their way to the top of the drill, and the players that were at the top of the drill move their way off the floor. Come in, touch hands, close out. Players that were at the bottom move their way to the top. Players that were at the top move off the floor. This is the second version that we talked about. The players at the top will touch hands and close out to the corners. The players at the bottom will touch hands and close out to the 45-degree angles, or the players at the top of the floor, the coaches at the top of the floor. Players that were at the top go off. Players that were at the bottom move up to the top. So I'll circle back. We're at the end here, but I'll circle back to the beginning. What is your philosophy? What is your system? Right? Meaning, what is important to you as a coach, as a mentor, as a parent? What do you want to teach young players about defense? I said I'd mention it again. Preach and teach on repeat. There's things that they need to hear. They will hear enough offensive basketball in their lives. Defensively, we have to stay on our players and start developing them at younger ages. Again, is it staying in a stance? So practice your stance and practice your slides. Remember, the lower player always wins in basketball. Defending without fouling. Make sure that our players are using their feet and their arms and hands, and they're playing big. You'll notice in all of the drills that I showed, it starts with our players having their hands out wide and them being in a good defensive stance. Defend in advance, right? As that ball moves, we are moving, right? As that ball is in the air, all of the players on the floor are moving. We can't wait for the ball to get to an offensive player before we decide to shift into our defensive stance or our defensive position. And then rebounding. Make sure that we box out and that we're teaching our players to do their work early and to do it together with their teammates on the floor. So we'll open it up now. I'll take off I'll stop sharing my screen. And I'll open it up to any questions that anyone may have.
I think there are a couple of questions in the chat. Should we go through them and just answer them one by one?
I love the chat. Trey has the highest 30. Yes, he does. The 30 plus feet shot percentage at 33. So shouldn't the opponents let him and others take the shot, since it's a very low percentage? The problem is when that ball starts to go in, it's very hard to stop him at that point. So again, for players in the NBA, we want to get all the way to their body. If they're too far out on the floor, we can go under on pick and rolls. But I think it's for us, we teach to get all the way to the body. And I agree, Amani should be the steal of the draft. I agree with that. We have another one. It says teams operate at a very high offensive rating when in transition. I agree with that completely, which is why we like to preach to our players that transition starts with getting defensive stops and rebounds. I see another one here. Coach Muhammad. Hi, Coach. Which defense is best for U12 players or U12 kids? I would say that a basic shell defense is great for teaching younger players and to teach them to move once the ball as the ball is being moved. So shell defense, meaning that everybody is either guarding their man or they're in a pinch or shrink spot around the ball with their hands out wide. I think I don't know that there's a great defensive system for kids so much as just teaching them the basic techniques of how to play defense. I think will serve them better in the long run. Next one, is it okay to defend the pick and roll ball handler from behind and not let the big screen? Yes, that is a way. I certainly agree. There's no right or wrong way to do these things. I think that the biggest piece that I want anyone to take away from this is whatever it is that you are teaching and preaching, that you drill over and over again so that your players become really, really good at it.
Hello, sir.
Yep.
Sir, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, sir, you were saying that to guard the paint in leagues like NBA and all, and how to guard the player if at all he steps foot in the paint.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
You were saying to guard the paint, right, sir?
Yep.
Not let the player get the ball in the paint. But if the player sets foot in the paint, how to guard him? Like he's in there.
Yeah. So we guard it with our bigs. Our defense is designed to not let the ball get to the middle, not necessarily not let the ball get to the paint. If the ball gets to the paint, it's a lot more difficult to guard, but we want the ball to stay out of the middle of the floor. So the drill that I showed, if the ball is driven down either the right or left slot, then we teach our bigs to step up and protect the guards versus any drive to the paint. And then the other big will protect that big. So our 4s and 5s protect each other, and then the 1, 2, and 3 scramble around the perimeter.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Hello, coach. Are you listening to me, or are you gonna read the next questions?
However you guys want me to do it. I feel like there's a lot of questions in the comments, but I can take them right away. So I can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, nice to meet you, and congratulations for the presentation.